Hi everyone, if you could take a seat, we'll get started in just the next couple minutes. I know nobody ever wants to sit at the front, but there's 4 seats here, a couple seats dotted through here, 2 next to me up front over here, and certainly a few more around the back if you need a place to sit.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm Jen Grigoraitis and I have the honor and privilege to be your mayor. I want to thank you all for being here tonight for this process. Before we get started with hearing from all of you, I just wanted to set the stage a little. Community engagement is essential to everything we do here in Melrose, and we want to create every opportunity for everyone to share their perspective to make an impact. I want to thank the team from my office who helped set this up, our colleagues at MMTV who are recording this for viewing later, and to some of our student volunteers. You can see them in the back. If you need assistance tonight, aren't sure where the restrooms are because you haven't been in high school in 30 years, just grab one of them and they can help you. 30 years. However many years, 30-ish. If you've been following along in the city and school budget process this year and last, you know that we are facing considerable financial pressures as our fixed costs continue to outpace revenue growth. Since taking office, I have been clear and honest about these challenges. My administration has made every effort to share information and updates about city finances with the community, and we have regularly and repeatedly shared updates with the community, the city council, and the school committee, including in several meetings just in the last couple months. We will continue to share information as we move through the budget via our regular communication channels and the city website. Before we begin tonight's opportunity for public input and ideas, I want to be very clear with everyone here and those that will watch later at home. Melrose will incur significant cuts to its budgets, city and schools, for the fiscal year that begins on July 1st. There is no way out of these cuts because cities are required by law to pass a balanced budget based on our known costs and revenues. We can't change our circumstances for the coming fiscal year. The time to do that was with last year's override, which I requested last spring in the hopes of avoiding some of these cuts. Although that proposal failed at the ballot, we are doing everything we can to mitigate some of the pain for next year with creative budgeting and carefully targeted cuts, but it's important to underline that we cannot truly solve this financial situation without additional recurring sustained revenue to the city. We are not alone in these circumstances, if that helps. Neighboring communities like Linfield, Winthrop, and Stoneham are currently seeking overrides in their spring elections, and the Professional Association of School Superintendents for Massachusetts recently published a letter making it clear that Melrose's circumstances are part of a much larger statewide trend. Because of these deep-seated structural budget challenges, I am considering a Proposition 2.5 override ballot question or multiple questions for the November 2025 general election. This is an option utilized by cities and towns throughout Massachusetts as a way for voters to decide how and if they want to invest in areas like teachers, city services and personnel, capital improvements, infrastructure projects, and more. It's a way for voters to tell City Hall what their priorities are and how much they are willing to contribute in taxes to make those priorities into realities. I announced last month that I convened a finance task force composed of city and school leaders and elected officials to help advise my administration on options for the override referendum. I'm pleased to welcome the task force here tonight and to introduce them to you. They're over here. City Auditor and CFO Carrie Golden, School Business Manager Ken Kelly, City Council President Lila Migliarelli, City Council Appropriations Chair Mark Garapay, School Committee Chair Dory Withy, and School Committee Vice Chair Jen McAndrew. The task force began meeting last month, gathering information from city finance officials, meeting with stakeholders like the leaders of all of our city and school employee unions, and seeking public input. We have already received dozens of emails from your neighbors and fellow Melrosians, and I'm sure some of the email writers are here tonight to speak. We are doing this work now so that our community has ample time to share their input and inform elements like the size of a proposed override and where new revenue should be targeted for spending. The task force will use all of the input we gather this spring to develop the ballot question or questions that I will then submit to the City Council, and the Council will ultimately decide whether to proceed with an override question or questions to go before voters for consideration. We have 90 minutes for tonight's public input, so we're going to limit speakers to 3 minutes. Please be succinct and limit the length of your comments so that everyone has a chance to be heard. Tom, this is Tom, from my office will hold up a 30-second warning card and a please finish card just to help you keep track of time. Please finish. Note the please. This is an open format for your comments, and the task force members and the other elected officials here tonight are in listening mode. I encourage all of you to listen to your fellow neighbors, whether their views and ideas are in line with yours or in opposition to what you think. In your remarks, we ask you to please consider two main questions. What should Melrose pass an override to fund? Schools, city services, infrastructure repairs, all or none of the above? What revenue should we seek? You don't need to provide a specific number, promise. But do you think we need to maintain level services, restore certain things that have been cut, or actually think proactively about where we want to grow and expand? If you don't have the chance to speak tonight, or if you have an idea you'd like to share after, we will continue to accept written feedback of any length via email to budget@cityofmelrose.org. If you'd like to speak tonight, please stand over here on the side near Lauren, raise your hand, Lauren, to wait your turn, and then when you take to the microphone, please state your name and street address. So we'll have folks line up here. If you can avoid crossing in front of the camera, that would be great. And we're gonna open it up, and we're ready for whoever would like to be our first speaker. Thank you all for being here.
Someone's got to be first.
I go first and I eat the last cookie as well. I'm not shy. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dan Hampson. I live at 45 Harold Street over by the Hoover School. I will keep it to 3 minutes because that doesn't say, please kindly stop. It says stop. Really thank you to the committee for the hard work. It is not an easy job. We've been really well informed about the challenges that we're facing, and we have to do it together, so thank you for all the work that you're doing and giving us the chance, and I know all week, to talk on this topic. I have 3 children spread out between the middle school and the high school, so Jen, in answering your request, I'm talking about high school funding, middle school funding. Our school's funding is primarily where my concerns lie. My dad's here, he's concerned about potholes, so we can push some money in that direction as well. In the last few years, I've become much more involved in sort of understanding our local politics, and I hear people talk about, we need to ask the hard questions of our politicians, or the budget is opaque. What are we supposed to do? But I've found it to be really different. People are asking hard questions. This meeting is asking hard questions. The city council works hard together. The school committee works hard together. We have hard issues. It's not a lack of hard questions. And we have a lot of information. I was surprised at the volume of information we can get our hands on. And some of that you'll hear me spout about as I get into my actual written notes. So my wife and I were thrilled. Back at the beginning of the school year, our daughter went into the high school, and she came back and she said, I'm loving it. She's loving the high school. And she hadn't been feeling that in her last year at the middle school. We credit the work that Mr. Merrill and his team have been able to do over several years to create that environment. And that's what it takes. It takes time to create and cement a new environment for kids to be in. Budget cuts in the middle school in particular that are going to be pretty harsh this coming year undermine all the work that Mr. Murphy has done over the last 3 years. It gets pushed aside before it gets a chance to be cemented. And that's tremendously disappointing. I should have been saying this before last spring, so it's a little late now for this upcoming school year, but I would ask that we really seriously consider an override that will help us return some of the teachers to the school. We don't need fewer teachers in the middle school. An example, my boys came home one day last week and said, we had 3 academic classes sitting in the cafeteria today because there were no substitutes. That's not where we want to be. Our district's student-teacher ratio is pretty rough on the statewide. If you compare us against schools that are in the same like size, we're in the bottom 5th out of about 50 school districts. As a community that loves our sports teams, we should know the bottom 5th is nowhere we want to be. So I'm asking tonight for your support in the future for an override of Prop 2.5 that's done smart, and people on fixed incomes who can't afford it won't have to. Thank you.
Good evening. Galen Ferna of 12 Mount Vernon Street, former longtime member on the Board of Aldermen and former mayor. And I wish I knew the actual questions that you really wanted an answer, but that's okay. I'm going for whatever. Good evening, and thank you to the Mayor Jen and the Financial Advisory Task Force for this forum, and to those that are working towards the financial stability of our community. I know only too well our budgetary constraints and a lack of revenue. As they say, been there, done that. I don't envy any of you. I come before you to share my concerns and those of my peers as you consider the financial state of our community and the options. I am concerned for the quality of life for older adults in the community. If the Milano Center were to decrease their hours and transportation options decrease for older adults, it would greatly affect their quality of life. I spent the last 12 years of my nursing career working with older adults, and I know that when their social activities decrease and/or their transportation decreases via the ride, it influences their quality of life. I care about traffic calming and enforcement within our community for drivers and pedestrians. Just this past week at the councilors meeting, we heard that 71% of the communities in our state spend more per capita on public safety initiatives than Melrose. As a member of the Traffic Commission, we hear many complaints, and we could be more proactive and creative with solutions if not for budget issues. I care about our ambulance service. Being a nurse, I know that every minute can count in getting to an emergency. The ability to have our own ambulance service within our fire department is a win-win for residents for many reasons. I am concerned that our police and fire departments need to have all the tools and knowledge that they need as they respond to emergencies. I am concerned that we need to maintain our city buildings and school buildings. I am concerned that we need to maintain our parks and open space. I am concerned about the continuance of our community events that involve the support of our DPW and police, who do a great job at these events. I am concerned that our cemetery be maintained as a beautiful and peaceful resting place for our loved ones. I am concerned that our new library be open and stocked to meet the needs of our youngest and oldest population. I am concerned that we provide our city employees, including our teachers, with competitive wages and benefits. I have not mentioned all my concerns with the schools because I know that there are plenty of parents here to advocate for the schools. But let me be clear, I am a big supporter of our schools. What I will say, whether one has children in our schools or not, we are all affected by the state of our schools, be it for real estate values as well as the fact that these children are the ones who will be servicing us in the future. We need to support their education and those that teach them. So as the budget process continues and you look to formulate the questions, it should be obvious to everyone that the only way to resolve such a deficit is by an override. The state is not in a position to help us out. We need to help ourselves in supporting what we want our community to be. Mayor Jen summed it up nicely in an interview with the Melrose Messenger. The decisions they make in Washington will impact our services, and they will impact our residents. Residents are going to be looking to our city to help them, and we just don't have that many levers that we can pull. And for my final comment, I will say this. All of our city services rely on one another, and we no longer have the levers to pull either. So whether it is one or two questions that are proposed, I will be supporting additional funding for all things Melrose. Thanks.
I support Melrose, I support the teachers, I support the fire department, city workers, all of them. I grew up in Melrose, graduated from Melrose High, have stayed current with what was going on because my parents passed. And let me tell you the story when my father died. My mother was on a fixed income. She lost some of the income because of the Social Security went down. I went down and talked with the city clerk about what can we do to help her pay the taxes. And she said there wasn't really that much to do because I was working. I still can't afford to retire. I couldn't work to pay anything off. And she basically said that there wasn't a whole lot they could do. That she gave the example of someone who had cancer and asked for some type of break, and she said they didn't get it. So when people tell me that there are programs for senior citizens, I don't think they're there. We had 40 people, my understanding is apply for the break, but the school system wouldn't take them. I'm retirement age, and I can't retire because I can't afford the taxes. My house insurance has doubled in the last 2 years, up $1,000 last year, up $1,000 this year. Heat is expensive, food, gas, all of it. I'm anticipating that my car insurance is going to go up. My salary is not going up 3%. I'm not getting gigantic raises. I can't afford the override. I just can't. My salary will do that. I have to balance my budget. I am going to have to cut back on things. And what I cut back to is going to affect the Melrose economy. I am not going to be going to the Melrose restaurants as much. I'm not going to buy coffee. I'm not going to be going to Buckaloo's. And I love the little paper and clay there. I'm not going to be able to spend my money there because I'm going to be caught up in paying bills. So that affects their salaries and also affects the property taxes that they're going to pay and the revenue with that. I would suggest that we start looking at pay for parking, the kiosks. When you look down at Melrose Main Street and the parking lots, that's revenue. Where is the third liquor store? That is revenue. And why don't we have a bar? I think Caruso's had the space for a restaurant. Why don't we have a bar? We have Hannah's that you can buy snacks at with that type of thing. You don't have to buy a meal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Carthouse. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight and for all the work that you're doing. My wife and I bought our first house in 2016. We chose to move to Melrose because of its vibrant community. We chose to move to Melrose because of its vibrant community and excellent school system. We now have 2 children at the Winthrop School. Because I'm so passionate about this city and what it can be, I am one of the leaders of the Yes for Melrose campaign to support the override. More often than not, I find Prop 2.5 incredibly frustrating, but I have to admit there is something to the idea of giving citizens the power to decide what kind of city they want to live in, to decide what services they want, at what level they want them, and what they're willing to pay for those services. So what's important to me? Schools that can fully meet the needs of all their students and give them opportunities to thrive. I want a system that provides a safe environment, outstanding curriculum, and extracurricular activities that allow students to grow to their full potential. Supporting our wonderful city employees, teachers, cops, firemen, nurses, administrators, and others by paying them a fair living wage. Living in a safe city, one where my kids can walk or bike to school or downtown, one where the streets are safe to drive on. And to that end, much like your dad, well-paved streets. Having a vibrant downtown full of great stores and restaurants. Having a library where my children can rent new books, and so much more. These things are so important to me, I'd like to be able to fund them for more than 1 year. As you know, each year inflation outstrips our revenue increases, sometimes by a little, when everything goes right, and sometimes by a lot. So I hope the ballot questions and the amounts asked for are structured in a way that they not only get our city services back to the levels where we want them, but that they can be maintained at those levels for at least the next several years. Unfortunately, Prop 2.5 means we'll periodically need overrides if we want to maintain our level of services, but maybe we can space them out with planning and a little bit of luck. I know it sounds like I'm asking for a lot, but I'm really just asking for a city that can predictably and reliably meet the needs of all its constituents. This is so important as people plan and build their lives here. This isn't possible without our current revenue base. We heard a stat the other night that 73% of municipalities in Massachusetts spend more per citizen than Melrose does. We don't have a spending problem. The city has done an incredible job with what they have. We have a revenue problem, and this is our chance to fix that. Finally, I would like to acknowledge that this is a big ask, and it may be difficult for some of our friends and neighbors, particularly those on fixed incomes. So I'm not asking for these things lightly, and I hope we can find ways to support those in need. However, I truly believe the costs, how widespread they are, and how difficult they are to deal with will be far greater if an override does not pass than the costs that arise if an override does. I'm glad we're all here tonight. We're all neighbors, and I'm looking forward to listening and learning from each other. Thank you.
Hi. Unlike my co-chair for CPAC, Chrissy, I'm not as good at speaking off the cuff, so I'm going to read from my remarks. First, I'd like to thank the committee for their work on this issue. I know that this process is complicated and nuanced, and I appreciate that you are taking the time to listen to the Melrose community. My name is Amanda Cormier. I live at 299 Grove Street, and I'm advocating today for additional school funding so that we can, at minimum, maintain level services. I'm the parent of a middle school student and a high school student, and I'm also co-chair of the Melrose Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now? Sorry. So I'm co-chair of CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. It's great to see some other CPAC board members here in the audience as well. A lot of people don't think about special education until you have a child who needs it. And once you need it, it's easy to be completely overwhelmed by the process. Special education laws, which define the rights, timelines, procedures for asking for services, testing, receiving services, etc., can be daunting, even for those of us with a law degree. So I understand that when it comes to the rights of our students, a lot of parents may not understand what we are up against. It is like a second job just to advocate for your child to ensure that they have access to a free and appropriate education, and many families do not have the time or resources to do so. So as much as you may hear that special education will not be touched by budget cuts because the school district is bound by law to provide services to students, the reality is quite different. For one thing, special ed students are not taught in a vacuum. When changes happen in a classroom, it affects all students. Larger class sizes mean each child gets less individual attention from teachers. It doesn't matter how amazing a classroom teacher is at their job, their time and resources are finite. In the middle school, the loss of the team model means that each teacher will have more students to track and less familiarity with each student. Increased needs, loss of experienced teachers, and strained resources are all going to lead to either students not getting what they need or going out of district for their needs, to meet their needs. Out-of-district costs continue to rise, yet they are the only option when the public school environment cannot provide an appropriate education, something all of our students have a right to by law. I'm so tired of this penny-wise, pound-foolish approach to the budget. The problems that will arise due to these cuts will be dramatically harder and more expensive to fix, even if we successfully pass an override in the future. We need to invest in our students now. Every little bit, extra bit that can go towards additional staffing and teacher development will help. We need the whole Melrose community to have enough empathy to care about what happens to these kids. Even if they don't have kids, or their kids are grown or in private schools, we are all in this together. And when the most vulnerable of us benefits, we all benefit. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dan. You can find me out on Fairmount Street. I have a kid in the Hoover. I got another kid starting in the Hoover in the fall. Actually, I got to do his paperwork tomorrow. I got to do that intake form stuff. Yeah, I got two main things that always run through my head about the override. Number one is that I was born in 1982, the year that this all came into effect. And since then, less than half the time has 2.5% beat inflation. That means that every other year, our budget gets cut. It just gets cut. Oh yeah, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not, you got to do more with less. You do that for 40 years. I'm 42 years old now. There's not enough to go around anymore. We haven't been taking care of our house, in short. It's coming down around us. The other thing I want to point out is that there's 316 school districts in this fine state of ours. Our per pupil spending, how much we spend per kid, bottom 15. The absolute bottom of the barrel. It's really upsetting to me, as you can tell. As the last person who was up here pointed out, one of the big problems is that we don't invest in order to save money. If we had better special education, like services in general, we would be able to keep kids in district that we wouldn't have to send out of district. You're wasting my time! Hold your applause. It's okay. I'm going to keep it short anyway. But yeah, if we keep kids in district, we save money. We need to invest for that to happen, though. That way we won't be spending money on transportation. We won't be spending money on tuition for schools that can educate these kids. Remember, by law, we're required to educate them. If we send them out of district, that counts, but it costs a lot of money. So, also, transportation, they can just up the rates anytime they like. They do it all the time. Last thing is, I'm not insensitive to the fact that there are people on fixed incomes. Like, my own parents are getting older. We have to take care of them. My wife's parents, same way. It's a reality, and I think possibly we're not doing enough to make exceptions for people who need exceptions and do the things we need to do to take care of all the people in our community. That's all I got. Thank you all.
I feel honored. Thank you, Tom. Good evening. My name is Jim Tierney. I live on Garfield Road. I'd like to first thank this task force for taking the time to listen to everybody tonight. All these opinions, I think, are going to be helpful as we try to fashion a way to address this situation. Earlier in my career, I had an opportunity to work in municipal government and deal with budget situations not unlike this one. And I think it's important to point out, as the person preceding me said, that the rate of inflation all too often exceeds the 2.5% that budgets can increase. There is another way to get additional tax revenue added to that base, and that's with net new growth. And I think it's really important that we also identify in this moment that net new growth is not happening anywhere right now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The conditions for development are very challenging between the cost of capital, the cost of materials, the cost of labor. It's just not a time when Melrose, or really any other community in a similar situation, is going to be able to find an alternative way out from the revenue issue that we have. And I think it's important to flag that because that is oftentimes how you make up that difference between 2.5% and the rising costs that follow. So with a situation where an inflationary environment is likely to persist in the near future, I continue to think that an override, is necessary for this community. But just as important, I believe, is the need to pass an override that provides Melrose with sufficient resources to do more than just survive into the next year. I think we need to prepare for a continuation of an environment where net new tax growth isn't on the horizon, and frankly, where at least a moderately inflationary environment is going to continue as well. Therefore, we have to be responsibly aggressive in determining the resource level that we need to aim for in this override question. We need this community to be fiscally healthy and also one that lives our shared community values. And there are many of them, all of them worthwhile. Well-trained and well-resourced public safety departments are important. Strong schools and fairly compensated teachers are important. Traffic safety is important. Services for seniors are important. Fixing potholes, planning for the city's future, plowing the streets, maintaining our public buildings, they're all important and can't be pitted against each other. My suggestion to you is that the override question recraft not pit these against each other, and let's reset our property tax basis in a way that doesn't merely keep our head above water. Let's collectively invest in Melrose the way so many of us have individually. Compassion and understanding are shared values in this community, and they should be reflected in this override question. Skipping here for some time. So let's use this override tool to embrace these shared values, be mindful of how we can assist our neighbors in need, and make decisions that future Melrosians will look back on and see as a step forward, not just a step sideways. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Financial Board, for giving me the opportunity to speak and share my thoughts with you today. And thank you for all the people who came out to speak. I know it's difficult, and I know we don't all have the same opinion, but nonetheless, I think we all are respectful for each other's opinions and ideas. My name is Christopher. I'm proud to call Melrose my home. I live at the corner of Vinton and Emerson with my wife and 2 kids, my son who is in 4th grade and my daughter who's starting her journey in kindergarten at Roosevelt. Beyond being a parent, I volunteer as a soccer coach. I actively support the Melrose Youth Hockey and host the annual Porch Fests, and overall an advocate for our city in general. I'm here today along with my neighbors because I'm deeply concerned not just about the cuts in our school system, but about the long-term fiscal health of Melrose. We all understand that our city is facing financial crisis, but I want to take a moment to bring everyone up to speed on how we got here by comparing ourselves to other municipalities that are near us. So let's talk about tax levies. For those of you who may not be familiar, a tax levy is the total amount of money a city collects from property taxes to fund its budget and cover local expenses. These taxes are typically divided into 2 categories, residential and commercial. Most cities have a mix of both, but the balance between them can vary significantly. In communities with a strong commercial base, a larger share of the tax burden falls on businesses like Saugus, which helps reduce the reliance on residential property taxes to fund local services. However, in cities like Melrose, with minimal commercial development, the burden shifts almost entirely to the residents, making it harder to maintain essential services without raising residential taxes. So how does Melrose compare to our immediate neighbors in these categories? So let's take our arch rival, Wakefield. In terms of total levies collected by Wakefield, 81% is done via residential, 19% in commercial. Stoneham, 16% commercial. Saugus, 29% commercial. And that's understandable. They have that whole Route 1 commercial zone. Malden, 19% commercial. Melrose, wait for it, 9%. 91% of our, oh crap. 91% of our total levy is collected through residential. Here's the gut punch. Not only do we have the lowest commercial basis, but we have the lowest property tax rates among our peer communities. In fact, we are the bottom 20 percentile of Massachusetts municipalities when it comes to residential property taxes. We have a revenue problem. But this just isn't a revenue problem, and I don't think I'm being overly dramatic when I say it's a crisis. Because of this, we're in the bottom third for teacher salaries. We're paying some of the lowest salaries in the state for firefighters. And I just want to say, skipping over here, blah, blah, blah. I believe in Melrose. My wife and I have built our lives here. Our friends, our connections, and our memories are rooted in our community. But I'm worried if we don't change our approach to this revenue problem, and in the long term, in a sustainable way, we risk losing the very fabric that holds us together. We'll talk later. Thank you.
Are you implying I'm short? Sure. Hi, my name is Janine Venuti, Altamont Street. In 2009, we were asked to do an override. We were told that the city desperately needed it, that we had overcrowding in our schools, that we were anticipating having an increase of over 400 kids in the next few years. And we went ahead and we passed that override. And the BB school was never opened. And since then, not only did we not get another 400 students, we've actually citywide gone down by over 100 students. Since then, we now have other funding that we didn't have at that time. The state changed its special education funding formula, which increased Melrose special education funding by 27%. We now have the fair share tax, we have the cannabis tax, we have the meals tax, we have the ride share tax, we have the Airbnb tax. We have more than 10 million additional funds coming into the city every year now. In addition, I don't have notes, so I'm going off. So, those things didn't happen. We were told doom and gloom. Last year, we were asked again to do another override. We were told they would have to cut teachers again. I listened to the school board meeting last night. It was very interesting. I've heard that they were able to address the behavioral issues, decreasing those by 50%. They were able to decrease vaping by 100%. And they said that they did that not by additional funds, because they were asked whether if the override didn't go through, if that would be affected. They said no, it was a net neutral. They changed processes and procedures. In other words, they came up with a different way of doing things. They thought differently, and they were able to work within their means to address the problem. And, the other thing that I heard was if we didn't pass that override last year, that they would be cutting teachers. Well, I heard last night during that meeting that they actually added 10 additional teachers at the middle school. At 9:27 p.m., that's when she spoke. Yep, okay. I'm part of, an Asian group here. Retirement used to be decades and decades away. Now it's not so far. And I'm part of a demographic group that's most likely to fall into poverty. I'm single, I'm female. In other words, I'm most likely to outlive my funds. So I'm trying to squirrel away as much as I can. I have done as much as I can in my own personal budget. I have cut everything I can, and I'm asking the city to be just as responsible as I am in my own budget and coming up with different ways to do the same things. And they showed that they could when we didn't pass the override last June. Here we are just months later, and even though we said no, they're back at it. So, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Christy Charles Burns. I live on Allen Place. I am the co-chair of the Melrose CPAC, as well as the parent of a freshman here at the high school. I don't honestly know what to say in the sense that those of you in this room who believe that being part of the solution is being a part of a community, is part of paying your fair share in taxes, is part of supporting our schools, supporting our city services, our infrastructure. And there are those of you in this room who I swear if I told you either support the override or your house would explode tomorrow, you'd sit while your house exploded. I don't think there's any convincing some people that this is needed or that it's the right thing to do. But I will say, anybody who says that behavior problems have been fixed in the Melrose Public Schools has never stepped foot in the middle school. Anybody who says that vaping has 100% been evaporated has never been in the high school because they have sensors that let us know when people are vaping in the bathrooms. But I don't give a crap about vaping, and I am not swearing tonight, friends. I don't give a crap about vaping. What I give a crap about is the students. My daughter spent 4 years out of district. She fought hard to come back here. And based on teachers who, quite frankly, if I were them, I would have quit and gone somewhere better that would have valued me and paid me more, she thrived. She is now in the high school where she has never been happier in school in all the years that she has gone since preschool. And if this gets screwed up by the fact that we can't understand that taxes are what fund a city, I don't know what to tell you guys. The reality is the world is changing. We cannot assume we are getting any federal money anymore. I recently declared I can't assume I'm not getting deported, and I was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Okay, nothing is certain anymore. And when the federal money doesn't come to us, it affects the state budget. And when the state money doesn't come to us, it affects the Melrose budget. And I've got something no one wants to hear, but our taxes are low. We do not pay a lot of taxes in Melrose. So I believe in things. I mean, I voted so that we could get the new public safety building. That is not high on my list of like priorities in life, but it's part of being a part of a community. It is part of taking care of our neighbors. Our kids matter. Do you want to keep my kid here, or do you want to send her back out of district to the tune of $70,000 or $80,000 a year? Well, newsflash, you're not sending her back out. And I will continue to fight to keep her here, although at this point she doesn't need me as much, because the schools have done their jobs. But I'm tired of hearing that they've made it work all these years and let them keep doing it. It's not right. Part of living in a community is paying your fair share of taxes. And I know that if an override ballot goes through, it's going to ask for just enough money to put a Band-Aid on a severed limb, and we're going to be back here a year from now because that's the only way to get people to vote for it. That's not the community that I moved here to live in. And I didn't swear at all.
Bravo, I won't have to rat you out on Facebook this time. Good evening, my name is Lisa Métis Bergeron. Some of you may have seen me on Facebook. I live at 63 Howard Street in Melrose with my husband and my two sons. They are 24 and 18. So I'm a parent of two children who attended Horace Mann and got a wonderful education there. They also attended the middle school. There were definitely behavior problems when they were in the middle school, one of them more so than the other. And they are now giving back to their community. You'll see my older son at ATI Physical Therapy. If you want to go visit Oliver, he can help you. And soon, hopefully, he will be getting his doctorate. I'm here tonight because both of my kids attended private school for two different reasons. One left because he had ADHD and needed additional help he could not get here in Melrose. The other one left during COVID. But I'm still here fighting for the override and trying to educate people on Facebook and in my community so that they can both care about the issues here as well as to help support them, because as a community member, I think that's important that we take care of everyone in the community. I also think that we all need to pay our fair share. And as well, it is actually something that supports everyone in this community, from the seniors to those who are low income, to me when I get old, and because it supports our property values. My house has not just gone up a little bit, but since I moved here in 2000, I bought my first house in 2000, then 2003. The 2003 house is worth twice as much as it was in 2003. And the reason, in part, for that is because we live in such a special place, and we need to maintain that for the future. So I would like to give a couple suggestions to the task force. I'm not going to comment on some of the other things that people have said so eloquently. The first thing is transparency. We all need to understand what the audits show and see those on the website. Thank you to Lauren, the mayor's chief of staff, for helping to try to upload some of that information, and as well to the city for responding to FOIA requests from people like Janine Venuti and others who are working on one side of this, as well as those of us who are working on the other. Because the more information that we have, the more we can help to explain to people what's going on. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that the task force and the mayor consider how they might be able to break the override down. Other towns do overrides differently than we have in the past. They do them in parts. They do them more frequently. And so it is actually possible to have an override for one aspect of city services, such as fire and police department, and have another that would be for the schools. Now, you might say we don't really want this to happen for the schools to be separate because then not everyone would support it, but I think it's better to get something than nothing, and some people may support one versus all. The last but not least, I think that we need to see multi-year forecasting so that people can understand how this is going to influence things, not just next year, which is going to be bad, but it's going to be even worse a couple years from now. And we need to see how we can figure these things out on a multi-year basis, not just for bringing in additional revenue from an override that helps us out for 1 year, but how it plays out over multiple years so that people don't accuse us of coming back the next year. And where did the money go? Then the last but not least is I think we need to look at some other revenue sources. There are enterprise funds that are not being utilized just yet here in Melrose that other towns are utilizing. Enterprise funds such as the stormwater revenue enterprise fund that would allow us to tax Melrose Wakefield Hospital and the armory down by Pine Banks. So those are things that would have minimal impact on homeowners, but could allow the city to access new revenue sources. So thank you very much for your patience.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Cody. I live at 64 Argyle Street. I'm not a Massachusetts native. I'm not a Melrose native, but I chose to come here. I remember living in Pennsylvania at the time and coming up here for a job and looking in the area and thinking I wanted a community just like Melrose. Just walking through the community, I realized this is the place where I want to be and raise my family. And I'm happy to say for the last 7 years, I've been able to call Melrose home. I have 3 beautiful girls. We're 9, 3, and 1. The 9-year-old is at the Hoover School, and the 3 and 1-year-old are at the Y Academy, and I look forward to them entering the public school system. I was a product of public school education, and I fully believe in the power of what that can bring and the sense of community that it creates. So, all right. You asked a few questions to focus, hopefully, the discussion, so I'm going to try to stick with that. So what should we focus on? I know I've talked about the schools, but I hopefully, by mentioning the community, it made you realize that I believe in an all-of-the-above approach, that we need to fund everything with this override. The schools are paramount, right? I mean, that is our future. I know personally 2 families who live on my street who have had to send their kids out of district because they can't receive the support that they need in Melrose schools. I think it's terrible. And honestly, I want our schools to teach more than just the basics. The 3 R's are great, but I'll tell you what, I took my 9-year-old to the middle school's production of Matilda, and I was blown away by the quality of that production. And that's the kind of thing that I want my kids to be a part of, right? Not just the basics of STEM. That's really wonderful, right? PASS, the MCAS, wonderful. But there's so much more to a great education than those things, and I want that to be included in our school funding. Infrastructure. I see so many of the roads, and good Lord, they look like Dresden post-fire bombing. It is bad. I love to bike, and I'm trying to bike on those roads, and it is not safe. You're playing Frogger through the potholes while avoiding the cars coming onside you, who are doing their best to be safe. Thank you very much. It makes riding and walking difficult. And our city services, paying a good wage to our city officials, serving our seniors and vulnerable populations, and taking care of our open spaces. All of these are so important to building the community I think that we all want to be in now and in the future. So to your second question, it has to be more than a year, it has to be more than short-sighted, looking at all right, what can we just get across the finish line? It has to be larger than that, planning for something that is the community that we all want to be a part of moving forward. And one last point, thank you very much, is equity. How can we make this fairer? I don't know the answer to that. I've been reading a lot about the introduction of the progressive income tax in the United States, and I think about something like that, right? How can we make it so that folks who have the ability to pay more maybe they can give a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. But I think we really need to take seriously the folks who have a hard time paying for these types of services, but who also deserve to be a part of our community too. Anyway, together we can do more. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. We've made it through a good portion of this evening. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much to the committee, who I know is working so hard to help us with these problems. I've watched the school budget process really closely, and I look forward to continuing it, but man, I don't envy you all your jobs. That's really rough. My name is Molly Babb. I live at 52 Sears Avenue. Bought my house 14 years ago from the lovely Mrs. Pat Hand. Pat Hand lived here. Never been told I wasn't loud. That's great. The woman I bought the house from lived here for 42 years. She raised 4 children here, and she lived in her own home until she wanted to move to assisted living. That is what I aspire Melrose to offer all of us. But I do want to tell you some stories about what's going on right now in the schools, and I want to suggest that this is not a schools versus community issue. Every single year, to meet our minimums for schools, we are taking money out of every other city budget, and we've gotten to an untenable situation. My daughter is in the 8th grade. She has had no French teacher the entire year, except for 8 weeks, where they hired a customer service agent who was a native speaker. You may be surprised it didn't work out. She sits in the cafeteria every single day during her supposed French time. The principal comes down and tries to supervise them because there is no one to instruct them. This is already happening. And we're not talking about the 30 cuts that are coming next year that are absolutely devastating. They are devastating to our kids immediately. They are devastating to our community long time. And even if you say, you know what, we're not all in it together, I'm just out for myself, every single service is being cut too. So I ask us to consider a minimum of 2 questions. One question that says, let's try to claw back and meet level services, because it's just coming more next year and there's nothing more to give. So if we at least get the opportunity to say, no, this is enough, we don't want any more cuts, that could be question 1, and I mean school and city. And then I would like to say that we should try and aspire, and I hope that we will fund more, but if the community gets a chance to have it broken out, that the absolute must to get back to where we've been versus possible growth areas. Maybe you want to walk across the West Side Knoll and see the state of our playing fields, walk across our playgrounds and see all the equipment falling apart. We need money in all the places, but I suggest that we at least get started with no more cuts, because this coming year is brutal to all of us, and the next year, I don't think we can even meet our minimums. We've done more with less for so many years. You're actually right on some level, those of us who spoke about doing more with less. It's just there is no more. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Prescott White. I live on Malvern Street. Thank you for all the hard work to the committee that you are doing to address our financial crisis. I'm here this evening to support an override in the city of Melrose. As we've heard, given the Proposition 2.5, which limits the tax increase to 2.5% per year, it's not possible to live within our means anymore when inflation has soared over the last 4 years, peaking at 8% in 2022. We simply don't have the money to continue basic city services. We're looking at cuts everywhere. I've even heard that there's a possibility of removing trash containers around our parks and Main Street to save money because we can't afford to have someone empty them. Anyone who says that we need to live within our means is not fully aware of the dire situation our city currently faces. Our schools are being stripped, which will affect everyone's home value. Melrose per pupil school spending used to be in the 50th percentile statewide through the 1990s and early 2000s. Around 2017, Melrose started trending towards some of the lowest spending per pupil in the state. The override in 19 helped bring us back up, but we are now reaching a point where we'll be next fiscal year where the minimum spend per student required by law is where we'll be at. Meaning if we cut anything else in our schools, we would be out of legal compliance with the state of Massachusetts. So I'd like to address class sizes. They've reached an unacceptable level after the failed override last year. I've heard people say, when I grew up, I was in classes of 30 students and we were fine. And while I can't verify what your class numbers were, let me share with you some data from the National Center of Education Statistics. The average elementary school class size in the United States is 19.1. In our neighboring states, elementary schools have class sizes of 19.5 in Rhode Island, 18 in Connecticut, 16 in Massachusetts. Here in Massachusetts, 16 in New Hampshire. Here in Massachusetts, the average class size in an elementary level is 16.7. We are well above those in our elementary schools. With some classes next year, after the 31 teacher cuts, we'll have 29 students at the elementary school level. At the high school level, the average class size across the U.S. is 21. Our neighboring states, Rhode Island has 20.5, Connecticut 19, New Hampshire 17 students per class. Across Massachusetts, the average is 17.4 students in the high school level. Next year, Melrose High School will have 28 students per class. That's 10 more students per classroom than the average size across the state. The numbers don't lie. Our schools are underfunded, and we need more teachers, not less. We're in real trouble with aging infrastructure and buildings, elimination of basic city services, and no capital or limited capital improvement reserve funds. So my ask tonight is to propose an override that includes enough funding to restore our city staffing levels and resources in our schools, DPW, library, senior centers, and other departments. Perhaps we can look at somehow linking that to people on fixed incomes, that they have an exemption from that override request. I'm not sure how that would work, but I think we should look into that. I think we also need to look ahead. The proposed override must account for the upcoming union contract negotiations this coming year by allocating additional funding for the negotiations. I think a well-thought-out plan for an override that brings Melrose back to core services while accounting for an increased cost in fiscal year 27 is a worthwhile investment for the citizens of Melrose.
Hi, I'm Betsy Garrett. I live at 70 Ardsmore Road. I just have I agree with everything that's been said tonight. I fully support an override. I think we need to increase our spending. I have a question about other sources of revenue and what Christopher said about the 9%. I don't know if he's still here. The 9% of revenue coming from commercial, I think that's a number that really sticks in my head. I would like to know, as you campaign for this override, what are you doing to attract commercial development in Melrose? All this building going on, this is all residential apartments. The ground floors could be accommodate some commercial development. I would like to know what Melrose is doing to attract businesses and attract commercial development. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Tullis. I live at 8 Thurston Road and have for about 35 years now, I guess. Just so you know where I'm coming from, I voted against the override last time. I plan to vote for it this time. And the reason is really what I want to say here tonight, and this is mostly to the mayor, the finance committee, aldermen, not so much to the school committee. You really got to make the case for it. And the way you make the case for it, or against it if you choose to vote against it, is to give citizens the information that they need to make the decision. I felt that in the last override, the case simply was not made. Not even almost at all. It certainly was not made well. I think the 100 or so people that we have in the room tonight are probably more clued in than the average citizen. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be here. It's a self-selecting group. I'm a little more clued in this year, which is why I'm planning to vote for the override, even though I don't know what the override is going to say yet. And that's one of the issues, Is this going to be a schools only? Is it going to be in everything? Is it going to be 3 or 4 different overrides broken? Is there going to be, I've heard a suggestion, how about one for level funding? How about one for multi-year forecasting? All of that information you guys have to give in very clean, short, high-level pie chart information to the citizens. What percentage of our budget is the schools? I've heard all sorts of different percentages. It's well over 50%. It's 70%. It depends on whether you include city side. It depends on whether you deduct the amount for people who are sent out. Come on. Pie chart, 30% for this, 20% for that. What are the revenue projections? What are the cost projections? What's the multi-year? The other thing that I've heard from a number of people is, well, you know, they threatened that the world was going to end if we didn't vote for the override. We didn't vote for the override last time. The world didn't end. Well, there's a reason for that, and that is because we vote for the override in November, and most of the contracts are negotiated, and the increased healthcare costs and all that kind of stuff come in May or in the spring. So, yeah, you vote for it in November. Nothing happens until next spring. Then next spring happens, and people don't make the connection. You guys got to make the connection. You got to sell it. You got to give people information, simple, high-level, bullet point information. Nobody can get, a lot of the people here want to get into the weeds and that's great. And certainly the school committee has to get in the weeds, the finance committee has to get in the weeds, the mayor has to get in the weeds. But most citizens, they just want 5, 8 points, bang, 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 you know, we're number 568th in the state, we're number 1st in the state for, you know, this good thing, we're number 1st in the state for this bad thing. You got to give people information, you got to sell, you got to do it in a very concise way. Thank you.
I feel like I'm the senior citizen here. My name is Tom Maffey, and I live at 11 Marmion Road. I came to Melrose with my family almost 60 years ago, and except for the years that I was in graduate school, I've lived here ever since. So I've been here close to 60 years. And a day doesn't go by that I don't think about the precious gem that Melrose is. And I think from a perspective of someone who's been around for quite a while, I used to challenge my dad when he'd say wisdom, age brings wisdom. I now think it does bring some wisdom. You know, Melrose is a city of I think it's 4.7 square miles. Think about that, 4.7 square miles. And yet we have beautiful neighborhoods, public spaces, a vibrant and busy downtown. I remember when Melrose downtown was a ghost town. I also remember when this city was almost in receivership, and look what's happened. An active senior center. I was down there for a talk not too long ago. I was amazed at the availability of programs for seniors there. The YMCA. I see dozens and dozens of young people going into the YMCA and seniors. So there's a lot to go on here. Melrose has always had good schools. And the value, no one would question that the values of our homes have skyrocketed. And while that shouldn't be the principal driver of this override, it is a factor because someone's house is probably the most important asset they own. And if the schools fail or get a bad reputation and young people don't move here, you're going to see property values affected by it. Melrose is missing the commercial property, but think about it. 4.7 miles. How much commercial property can you put in Melrose when you have all the homes that we have? We don't have Route 1 that goes through Saugus. We don't have Route 28 that goes through Stoneham and Reading. Think about, imagine, you want to turn the Fellsway into Route 1. I mean, that would be ghastly. Who would ever do that? So we live in a city that happens to be blessed with a lot, but we do have to live on our real estate taxes as the principal source of our revenue. I mean, we have 2 golf courses here. Mount Hood, the list goes on and on. I did some research. Melrose is, let me see if I can find the numbers here. Melrose has always been a conservative city. Jim Milano was the mayor here for 20 years. We were known as the debt-free city. I knew Jim Milano. No one would ever accuse him of being an overspender. So there were 20 years when he treated the city of Melrose checkbook like it was his own personal checkbook. So we're kind of making up for that time. I think our per pupil expenditure for 2023, which is the latest figure I could find, was $16,293, which is less than that spent by Reading, Stoneham, Saugus, Wakefield, or Danvers. Our tax rate is less than those 5 communities. And I was really surprised at this one, our per capita operating costs for fiscal year 2025 is substantially lower than Reading, Stoneham, Saugus, Wakefield, and Danvers. I applaud your efforts to come up with solutions to solve our revenue problem, but it's not an overspending problem, it's a revenue problem. No one's spending a lot of money on our streets, and I applaud the last person who spoke. If we passed an override, Proposition 2.5 was supposed to discipline cities and towns. It was never supposed to be a straitjacket. And how it came to be that every year these communities go through this death march about passing an override. If you have a specific need, like the streets, for instance, these streets are awful. So if we passed an override down the road dedicated to streets and people see they now have smooth streets, they might say, gee, that was worth spending that little extra money. So I applaud you for all your efforts. I wish you well, and I intend to support the override.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Rolandella. I live on Hawes Avenue. I have 2 children at the high school, and I don't have data, I don't have a speech. A lot of good information came out tonight. I guess my ask, and it's similar to the man over there that just spoke a couple minutes ago, is we need a fulsome budget. We know, $4 million for the schools, about $2 million for the city. What is gonna happen in 3 months when we have to, I know this task force is for the override, but we have cuts that need to be made at the city level for the coming year, and we don't know what those are. I have not seen a succinct pie chart. I think you had mentioned pie charts. We need a very concise, understandable, overall budget that looks at in totality so that we can make decisions. Is it, I think, Leah, you had said, is it the library for, 2 teachers? Obviously, I'm a huge reader. I would not propose that, but we need to make those decisions, and without seeing the city side, I think it's really challenging, and I think it's terrible for our high school and middle school kids that have to take the cut for all of this. So.
Hi, good evening. Committee, mayor, former mayor. My name is Alejandro Suarez. I live on Trenton Street, and my family moved to Melrose in 2020. We love it here, and I love it. Right? You don't see Wakefield T-shirts, you don't see Melvin Stoneham T-shirts, but you see Melrose T-shirts, right? And to answer your questions at all this time is, I would like to have the committee seek to raise funds of $8 million for education, and all funds necessary for the city to be able to function. And to also have only one question in the override, because we are one Melrose. We are all together in this, okay? And sadly, yeah, we have potholes, right? We pay overtime for snow plowing. We pay overtime for our amazing police officers because we don't have enough. We're trying to get them out of the academy, but we don't have enough. We have to do urgent maintenance on schools, on the Milano Center, on the Memorial Hall, everywhere. We have a new library that we might not be able to staff. We have a new police and fire stations that may not get built. They might get stalled due to raising costs and tariffs. As for the schools, this week, I had to keep my 6-year-old at home because of threats at the school. So there are behavioral problems in our schools. So why doesn't the city do better? Why not live within the means? Well, let's think about this, right? Our houses insurance are going up. The cost of the heat is going up. Groceries are going up a lot. Can't bake. Eggs cost too much. Healthcare is going up. Now think about the city, right? Buildings, transportation, that has insurance. That's going up, right? Their standards of insurance are higher than ours. The heat, well, the utilities. You want heat at the Milano Center? Of course, for our senior citizens. You want food at the school? Definitely, right? Our youngest need that the most. Healthcare. Healthcare costs for our first responders. They're putting their lives on the line for us. And you mentioned not getting a raise. Well, the city is not only not getting a raise, it's getting its salary cut, right? We are, on top of that, we're losing the federal funding. So, what about the schools? Well, the schools got a side gig, right? Think about it, they're driving Uber. They have Ed Stations, which is our after-school program. It makes money, right? Schools are making money. Sadly, not enough, but they're trying, right? So why don't we do better? We are doing better. So we've already optimized, but now, if we don't pass this override, we'll be punching ourselves in the face, right? As parents of the PTO, we fully fund programs. We pay for all the field trips so that all children can go. No questions asked about if you have money or not. We bring special speakers. So we are doing all this, and yet we had to cut 31, or we might cut 31 teachers. So we're already at that point. So I would like to encourage you all to look at the budget and see if there's anything else that you would cut, right? And remember, we are one Melrose. And I would like to encourage all of you to vote yes for Melrose. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim O'Loughlin, 39 Lincoln Street. I voiced my support for the override on Monday night in front of the City Council. I spoke about public safety that night. I've joined the override committee, but I want to let you know why I joined the override committee, what really makes me passionate about this, and it's the schools. And I'll tell you why. I have 3 adult children. They're 35, 33, and 27, and I see the challenges that those adult children, my children, are facing. And I see in their faces the same stress that I see in the faces of the young parents here. I can't imagine what you're going through. I know what I paid for my house in 1986 and what I paid for my house in 1993. And I know, what's the average price of a house in Melrose now? $800,000-$900,000? I don't know how you're doing it. And then you do that, and you send your kids to school, and then this is what we have. I want to clarify, one gentleman said that our 2023 school spending was 15th from the bottom. Well, that includes charter schools and vocational schools. If you take out charter schools and vocational schools that have a different cost structure, we're 9th from the bottom. 9th. That's like the 4th percentile of 291 communities. 9th. And then somebody might say, well, hey, we had an increase between 23 and 24. So I estimated the per pupil spending for 24, and I compared it to all of the other communities in the state for fiscal year 2023, and we were 35th. And we know that's wrong because every other community bumped their spending up. So we're at the 12th percentile, and that's just an estimate. That's just unsatisfactory, and I don't know how young families are doing it, and they're trying to do good for their kids. And I feel a personal obligation when I see the young families here to look at my own kids and try to identify with them. Something that's really bothersome to me is the pre-K fee of $11,000. So you're a young family, you just paid for this $900,000 house, both of you are working, right, 50 hours a week, whatever it is, and you got to come up with $11,000 to send your kid to pre-K. And these programs are trying to make some money to subsidize the schools. That's just not right. We can't be doing that as a community to the young families that we want to come here, bring vibrancy. They're all good, decent people, and we just have to do better than that. I got 30 seconds left, so I am just going to say, you know, when I look at per capita spending, we're low on that. I mentioned that Monday night. When I look at per pupil spending, we're at the 4th percentile. We don't have an efficiency problem in Melrose. We have a revenue problem. We need to support the override. We need the override to not only catch us up, but to try to get us ahead, because that's another problem too. We have so few overrides that they never really catch us up. They just barely get us over the line. And then people are saying, you know, we just had one 5 years ago. Well, because it didn't catch us up. It wasn't good enough. So anyways, please support the override. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Warner. It's actually not, but Melrose has decided my last name is Warner, and despite my repeated efforts to have it changed over 22 years, I've just embraced the name. I live on Waverly Avenue here in Melrose. I recognize the schools need funding, but I also recognize that the city's budget's out of whack in many areas. And those places should be brought in line before deciding how much the schools and the city might need. It seems a bit odd to me to ask for an override for the school and the city when the city budget hasn't been completed. Since the city budget isn't yet available, I looked at the fiscal year 2025 expense budget, and I compared it to 3 of our neighboring towns, Stoneham, our arch rival, Wakefield, and Winchester. Note that the data aren't perfect. Towns may categorize some things differently than other towns. For pensions, in absolute dollar terms, Melrose pension expense is larger than the 3 other towns. It's nearly $300,000 more than Stoneham and Winchester, and $610,000 more than Wakefield. I'm not sure how that's possible. Health insurance, this is a big one. In absolute dollar terms, Melrose spends $6 million more than Stoneham on health insurance, $3 million more than Wakefield and Winchester. Yes, Melrose funds a larger portion of health insurance than other towns. It funds 83%, Stoneham's at 20%, at least it was in 2021, the last time I could find data. And Wakefield and Winchester are at 25%. Now, Melrose is going to 20% over a period of a few years, but in my opinion, it's not enough and it's not fast enough. I think we should get to 25% and offset the difference by higher teacher salaries. I'll skip the rest of that part because I know I'm on time limit. There's also a few other areas that if they were just brought in line with the other towns, I'm not asking these to be cut, but like for instance, legal. Melrose spends $1.2 million for legal. That's 492% more than Wakefield and 125% more than Winchester. Melrose has a lawyer dedicated just to the schools. No other city has that. I think that expense should be brought in line. I won't go through all the other ones in detail, but if they were to bring, thank you, legal, information technology, the planning board, and the health department, just in line with other towns, that's $2 million that could be allocated to the schools. That's a lot of teachers. The superintendent defended the decision to cut more than 30 teachers this year, but it's really 50 teachers because we lost 17 last year and 5 administrators this year. And he defended the classroom sizes of 28 students and having 1 principal to oversee the middle school and the high school. And he pointed to Saugus and Watertown as 2 towns that run that model. Are those really the schools Melrose wants to emulate? Okay, Saugus High School is ranked 273rd out of 437 schools. Watertown is ranked 168th. Melrose is ranked 60th. Lastly, I promise. I'm glad my students are already through Melrose Public Schools. They're now in college. And I wish the students of today and the students of tomorrow could be as fortunate as they were. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Wu. I live on East Emerson Street, and I'm the parent of 3rd and 5th graders at the Hoover School. And I just wanted to voice an opinion that it is critical that we urgently and immediately invest in restoring Melrose services to what draws us together as a community. That's libraries, that's literally roads, emergency services, and yes, schools. And I really appreciated many of the comments today, but Mr. Maffey, I think, was talking about how special this community is, and it's what brought me and my family here, and I think it's at risk if we don't take urgent action quickly. This to me is not level funding and cannot be considered on a short-term basis. And so some of what I think we need our city leaders to do is really look ahead and understand what does it take to fund those services at the level that we've been accustomed, at the level that has served us well for many years, and at the level that brought us together into this community. We need to understand what it takes to actually have those kinds of services and think about this override question in a way that won't be a stopgap, that won't be a short-term fix, that won't have us fighting in just a couple of years for basic things that we are so upset about losing that we get anxious and show up here. I think we need to start building towards and investing in the Melrose that brought us here to begin with. And I'll just close by saying I've seen through a number of different professional experiences what happens when systems are at their limit and pinched too greatly. And you start to see what we are seeing here, which is that you can't drive anywhere without going through many, many potholes, that you have teachers teaching in subjects that they are not certified for, that you have rain coming down in buildings because you can't get ahead of things. Being at the level that we are at causes us to make short-term decisions that don't serve our long-term needs and ends up being penny-wise and pound-foolish. So I hope that we can come together and build back towards what we all want to see. Thank you.
Is there anyone else looking to speak tonight? Okay, we will be the Rare City event that actually ends a little bit early. So thank you all for being here, for speaking, for sharing your thoughts and opinions, and for listening to one another. We will have more information out in the coming months. The city budget should be out May 5th, and the school budget process continues. Thank you all. Have a great evening.